Hello BookTube. Today I'm going to be doing the Arthropod Book Tag. The tag was created by the Rambling Raconteur, and I first learned about this tag from Steve Donahue, and I will be leaving links to both down below. Let's begin. Prompt number 1. Some insects are critical to our global ecosystem because they transfer pollen between flowering plants, stimulating biodiversity and the reproduction of these species. What is a book that has pollinated your reading life and helped you restart reading? Now, this prompt, I think the question reads a little weird. I think it's assuming that there is a lull in reading, whether it's those decades or however long between some people having to read for school and then discovering reading for pleasure, or a reading slump that is eventually there's this one book that solves or cures the reading slump. So anyway, I'm going to go take this in terms of a reading slump, or at least a book I really enjoyed after a string of books I did not care for. And that book is Radiance by Catherynne and Valente. So I first read this book in 2017. Prior to reading Radiance, which I'd had since 2015, I want to say I got it for Christmas in 2015, and I didn't actually get around to reading it until 2017. But prior to finally breaking down and reading this, I had a string of 4 or 5 books I did not care for at all. I mean, I think there would be like a string of 1 or 2 star books, and I was despairing, and then I finally decided to pick this up and absolutely loved it. And I came back to it last year and reread it and still loved it. So definitely I would say Radiance by Cat Valente is a book that pollinated my reading life, which is okay. Maybe over here. Prompt number 2. Is there an insect you find particularly interesting? Well, since prompt number 1 very obviously refers to butterflies and also bees, but I am rather very interested in butterflies. They are one of my favorite insects. I also am quite fond of Hymenoptera, the bees and ants and wasps, and I also like dragonflies. And mantids aren't too bad either. And I share my fascination with butterflies with my mom, who has a collection of butterfly images, including a pastel painting of a butterfly I made for her birthday, I want to say in 2017, which not necessarily very good painting, but yeah. Prompt number 3. Many arachnids create webs to trap their prey. What is a work that really stuck to you and drew you into its world? For this prompt, I am going with A Big Wonderful Thing, A History of Texas by Stephen Harrigan. This book drew me in from the first pages and did not let me go until the very end. It was a magnificent, wonderful reading experience. Cannot recommend it highly enough. Prompt number 4. The myriapod millipede derives its name from the belief that it has 1,000 legs, when in reality most species have fewer than 700. Excuse me. What is a work that had a high page count but felt much shorter as you read it? I'm going to go with The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. So this is book 1 in his Dandelion Dynasty series. This is his big fantasy epic series. I think book 3 is nearing completion, maybe. And it's been quite some time since I've read it, but I remember pretty much the reading process going by phenomenally quickly. I just gobbled this book up. Probably should come back and reread it again soon, particularly given I think the 3rd book should hopefully be coming out either later this year or more likely next year. Prompt number 5. The scorpion is an infamous arachnid with a venomous stinger on its tail. What is a work that stung you with its ending? I have 2. One ending that I thought is a particularly powerful one, even though a very harsh ending, and one that I think left much to be desired. So the ending that left much, I think, to be desired is the end of China Mieville's The Scar, in which the climax, the reader is pretty much, there's this momentum to find out what the scar is, to go there, to reach this goal. And then in the final acts, there's this insurrection, this rebellion on the part of the crew of the pirate city, this floating amalgamation of ships. And ultimately, the decision is made to not carry on to the Scar, to abandon the quest. And for the pirate leader who pushed to go, basically taking, I think she actually goes on her own. She just goes in a little life raft and heads towards Scar on her own, and there's never any sort of resolution about what the Scar actually is, whether this one character who claims to have seen it, or a future version of that character who has claimed to see it and to see what happens when they get there, is believed. And it is just a letdown. It's just like a we're going, and then and then I think an ending that is particularly powerful, although again it's not a complete ending. It's sort of, at the ending, it's a feeling of devastation, of that these characters have come together and understand what has happened to them, but it will take years, if ever, to fully recover. And that is the ending of Mysterious Skin by Scott Heim, which I am currently in the process of reading or rereading. I had this book for decades. I want to say this is one of the books that have been in my collection for the longest. I got it in high school and read it in high school, and I haven't really read it since then. And I'm kind of in a mood to reread some of the books I've read in high school in college and just see what I make of them with the distance of time. And so this is one of those books, and going on memory, I mean, the ending is just utterly devastating. Just utterly devastating. So, yeah. Prompt number 6. Crustaceans are a diverse subphylum of arthropods that live in water. Name a work that makes you think of the sea. I could double up and go with the scar, but I'm not. I'm going with Wild Sea, A History of the Southern Ocean by Joy McCann. So, when I first saw Steve Donahue haul this book early last year, I immediately wanted it. And I waffled, as I want to do, for a few months, and then I finally bought it, I think towards the end of last year, maybe beginning of this year. And then I read it a month or so ago, and just absolutely blew me away. This is a fantastic history of the Southern Ocean and the history of the scientific exploration of the Southern Ocean. Just brilliant book. Looking forward to anything else Joy McCann writes. Prompt number 7. Trilobites flourished in the oceans before going extinct in the Permian mass extinction. Who is a writer that will not produce any more work and that you believe was influential but is now sadly neglected? Thinking about this prompt brought an immediate face to mind, and that is Tanith Lee, or name to mind. Tanith Lee was a influential science fiction and fantasy writer who, her main period was like the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, but by the 2000s and certainly into the 2010s before her death, her career was floundering. She was continuing to write up till the end, but she just could not find a publisher interested in her work. And yeah, I don't think, despite the poetics of her work, that I'm not entirely sure exactly how influential she was. I would like to have thought she was quite influential. But I think certainly, even with these mass market re-releases of her work that Daw did around the time of her death, I don't think she's going to have as much influence as she did in her heyday. So, yeah. And prompt number 8. Is there an arthropod that you are afraid of or concerned about? Cockroaches. I utterly loathe cockroaches. I'm also rather scared of spiders, particularly brown recluses. As Steve Donahue mentioned in his video, The Red Hourglass by Gordon Grice. And if you read the chapter on brown recluses, yeah, that is the scariest chapter in that book. And so I'm kind of leery about spiders too, but they do kill the cockroaches. So, I mean, as long as they're not kind of in my territory or I can see them, they're okay. Keep killing the cockroaches. Cockroaches, on the other hand, utterly hate them. Prompt number 9. Ending on a high note, some arthropods, like the butterfly, undergo extraordinary metamorphoses. The fully grown butterfly soars over the ground that the caterpillar scuttles across? What is a book that opens your mind and helped it take flight? I'm going to go with Alexander of Macedon, 356 to 323 BC, a historical biography by Peter Green. This is the first biography of Alexander the Great I read, and it really inspired in me a deep interest in reading more about him, his time period, and the periods that came after him. And I have amassed the beginnings of a pretty good collection of Alexandrian and Hellenistic histories. Looking forward to more biographies, though. So, yeah. And finally, tagging people. As usual, if you are interested in this tag or you're doing tags and would like to do this tag, consider yourself tagged. If you don't, you're not tagged. So anyway, BookTube, that was quite fun. So I'll be signing off now. Thank you and have a great rest of your day or evening, and stay safe. Thank you, BookTube.